Hello everyone, Lone Reader again. Another Minecraft video. This is same world I've been showcasing. This is the box, which is now reset. This is actually going to be a quick showcase and more of a technical video. I'm going to show some of these circuits that I use to make one button do several things. But first, let's do this. Yay! Oh shit, we're trapped. I can't get out. No, no. Okay. Obviously, I'm in control of the situation because I made this place. Press this button here. Not only do the lights turn on, but you also get a cool spiral staircase. You can turn them off again. But yeah, that's cool. This is, like I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, inspired by one of my friends, who admittedly was the first I saw to do this. I thought, wow, that looked really cool. It basically uses the same kind of clock that that big beam cannon thing over there uses. I showed that last video, except that this one also goes up, and it doesn't have to retrigger itself. See, there it is, going up. And this is just for the top part, the roof, to retract and extend. And you can, now that you're up here, Leroy Jenkins yourself the heck out of here, if you so desire. I am just going to set this and bust out of here with my god powers. There we go. Okay. So this one uses a certain kind of circuit, which I'm not going to demonstrate on this one here because it's really complicated. It actually has two of practically the same circuit. It's that guy, which, if you don't know redstone at all, is going to be really complicated, and if you know redstone, might be really complicated. So, it's not as evil as it looks. It's the same thing I use for my auto house to keep the state on and off, and it's the same thing I use in my light switch 2.0. The light switch 2.0 has a little modification to it. So this is the first design I came up with. It's a bit bigger than it has to be, just because I wanted space to make sure I wasn't screwing anything up. The way it works is, here, I'll be a heathen and destroy some of my blocks. Okay. Get out of here, blocks. We don't want you. Alright, the way it works is, essentially, so you press the button, right? And lights turn on, and you press the button again, and the lights turn off. How do we do that? This is where the magic happens. Alright, so what this does is, obviously you have two things, and this needs repeaters, because repeaters are really awesome for one of many reasons. The one being used here is the fact that they don't conduct to the side, and they don't conduct backward. The only place they conduct to is from the input to the output, and you can use that. So, I'll explain that in a second. What this is here is obviously one of those state-saving devices where you turn one torch off and it stays off because this other torch then turns on and it keeps it off, and it's one of those weird cycles like that. That's really the best I can explain it. Oh, no, wait, here we go. So this light is on right now, so its charge keeps that torch off. As soon as this torch is turned off, that charge will no longer be there. That torch will turn on and it charges to here, so this one will stay off. Alright, and we use that to basically run this whole circuit. And this is how we power these separate things, because a redstone repeater can charge a block, which will then, charge another redstone repeater, or even some redstone coming away from that block. That's how we use it, and we use this piston to decide which block will go to it. So basically how this works is, we have our input here, split into two of these outputs. Notice that both of these get charged when the button is pressed. I'll show you. Both charged. The way it works is, only one of these has the block in it, right? So only one of these conducts. Thankfully, this block of the piston right here does not carry a charge. That's the only reason this works. So basically what happens right now is only this one will transmit through, and this transmits through. Notice because of the repeaters, it's not sharing across anything. that line just appears that way. It's not actually taking charge from this, it's taking charge from that over there, or from this repeater right here when this is turned on. But when you press the button now, the charge will go through this line, right? And it'll go and turn this torch off. So this torch then turns on, keeping this one off, and what happens is, once this torch turns off, the power goes off, which is powering this piston, sorry. So once this piston stops being powered, the block retracts, like so, and now you have the alternate line being charged, where this line goes through, charges this, turns this torch off, so this one goes on, this power then stays on, and this redstone, sorry, why do I keep saying that? This piston is now remains charged, remains on, so it switches again. And that's cyclical. You can keep doing that as many times as you want. The reason this works is also because of a neat little trick I found with repeaters. These two repeaters take the charge from here. Notice these repeaters go that way. These two repeaters go that way. They power this guy. And you need two repeaters set to 4. That's the longest distance. Because an interesting thing I noticed is that 2 repeaters set to 4 is almost exactly the pulse length of a button or pressure plate. So watch what happens without these repeaters. It totally screws the circuit up. Alright, let's just put that there. What happens is, as soon as the button is pressed, this guy moves and you're no longer receiving power, and it just messes it up. So you need that to stay where it is for the length of the pulse button. That's where the 2 repeaters come in. See, and it kind of works, but you get all this weird shit, and it's not pretty. So the way you make it work perfectly is you put the 2 repeaters there, right? And you set them to 4, to 1 pulse width. So now for the entire time this button is powered, that repeater will stay there, and then it will turn off because the pulse widths are the same. Ta-da! And that's all there is to it. Okay, so I made some variations for this guy because obviously just turning something on and off wouldn't work because of the way this is set up. So how this works is each side is completely separate circuits. They connect to this middle one, but obviously you see the charge can't go backwards through this repeater, so those 2 circuits remain essentially separate circuits. They can't power each other, in other words. Obviously with just a plain, on-off switch button like that one, which, okay, basically what this does is it changes that button into a lever. So, I mean, you could circumvent the whole thing by having a lever, but a button is cooler. And it also opens up the door for, like, pressure plates and shit. So just stuff, like, will turn on and off when you step on the pressure plate over and over. That's the sole reason it's cool. This one actually splits one single button's charge into 2 separate circuits. I'll show you that. Let's just open this up a bit so we can see. Don't you love my gold bricks? Okay. So what happens here is essentially the same thing. This runs through. There's a little extra stuff here, but remember, because repeaters can charge blocks, it carries through. I'll explain these extra blocks in a second. Goes to this state saver, all that jazz. Alright. Okay. So let's just demonstrate. Ta-da! And notice again, we have our 2 repeaters set to full for this guy, which is the pulse width. So he stays there for the entire time that the circuit is charged. Alright. And then he moves to his new position. Okay. The deal with these extra blocks. These are what splits the 1 pulse into separate circuits. Alright. You notice I said these blocks carry a charge, so naturally they can carry it through. They can also carry it to the side, and the important part is they cannot carry it to the block next to them. It has to be one of these guys, or even a piston or redstone. right? They cannot charge another block, which comes in handy. So the charge now can go from the back to the front, to the right, but not to the left. All right, same for this guy. It can go front, the left, but not to the right. This is where the splitting is done. So notice this block powers that circuit over there. This block powers that circuit over there. And at the same time, they also go through to the state change, which the reason this is here is to ensure that this guy stays where it needs to be, either over here or over here, depending. That's the only reason we have this little saver thingy in here, right? Because without it, the circuit wouldn't work. So what happens is, so we press the button now, charge comes through here, it can't go through there, obviously, so this line's cut off. So it goes through here, goes through the state changer, but what we want, what's important is that it also goes to the side here from this block, goes to the side, and up, and it powers this guy, which obviously the way I have it set up is this one retracts first, this one pushes, so that the gold block underneath here gets over to the side, and the lightstone block gets pushed down into the roof. Alright? When that happens, obviously, because of the way this works out, I'll show you. Like we saw in the last one, now the opposite circuit is primed, and what this one does is it splits it again, except this time it goes to the other circuit. Now, I've been thinking of doing something that would be really complicated, which is basically you could have one button cycle through a whole bunch of stuff, and the way you do that is you'd have first this father circuit, which splits into two, and then you could have these circuits also splitting into two, and so on and so forth, until you take up all your available space and it gets so complicated that you don't know what to do with it anymore. That's basically how it works. Alright? And okay, so that's cool. And now let me show you my clock function and my delay functions, because those are pretty sweet as well. Right. This is a clock. Sure doesn't look like it, does it? This is actually a pretty standard clock. The cool thing about this is, alright, so okay, first a little explanation. This is the delay system for the off. You know how I said that 2 redstone repeaters set to 4? That's exactly 1 pulse length that you get when you press a button or a pressure plate, right? So let me just show you so you can clearly see here. So set to 4, and we have our button. Alright. Now, the cool thing about this is this circuit will turn off, right when that circuit finally gets power from these repeaters. See, there's a little overlay, but that's good, because that means you're supplying continuous power, and what you've done now is essentially lengthened this button's pulse width by about 1 button. So it's as if you were pressing this button again right after it turns off, or like right before it turns off, so you're never losing power. With that in mind, you can make certain clocks. The cool thing about these clocks is if you have, like I do over here, you go 1, then 4, then 6. Notice always increasing by 2. And you can't really see these. There's something wrong with the light texturing on the repeaters, but there we go. Notice these are all set to full. What you can do then is have a clock that basically every once in a while pulses on or off really fast and then goes back to its default state, which is awesome. Or you just have a standard clock, but it also opens the door. This is, you notice, I have conducting through a block, right? This is how you turn it off, because when you press the off button in there, once this is cycling, this guy gets pulled back because the charge turns off this torch, and also I have the charge delayed for a while, so it's essentially 1, 2, 3. It's essentially 4 button lengths long. So it holds this back for quite a distance to let all the energy cycle out of this clock before it resets the circuit. That same thing is used on this big guy, although a bit longer and a bit more complicated. There we have, notice that. But that actually stems from this guy over here, which is interesting to try to figure out. Here we have, so we already have one straight from the button, which is way over there. So 2, 3, 4. This is actually the same thing. So now we have 4, 5, 6, 7 button lengths long. So these holds, so this basically powers or unpowers these pistons for quite a long time when you press the off button. I'll show you. Notice they just pulled back. They're still pulling back. You can see it delaying there. Ta-da! And that's how you turn it off. You can make this pretty much as long as you want, as long as you can get the charge to reach from the very, furthest to all your points. And that's pretty much all I have for you right now. I plan on making a cool kind of lock soon. When that gets done, I'll probably show you guys around it. But again, thanks for watching, and have a great day.